So several people have asked me about how I lost my weight. And quite honestly, it hasn't been that much weight that I've lost. I have lost 35 pounds, and this is August of 2018. So we're looking back towards the beginning of this year, late last year. The most that I got up to was about 235 or 230. And so officially, what I have concluded is that I've lost 35 pounds because I'm down to 195. So there it is. I've lost 35 pounds. Everybody's been asking me how in the world have I done it. So I'm making a video to kind of explain that to the best of my ability. As for myself, there's several things that I begin to really pay close attention to, and to backtrack just a little bit, at the beginning of the year, I began having some heart palpitations and flutters and so forth. This went on for, I guess, up until April, off and on. I mean, just tons of heart flutters, and we couldn't figure out what was causing it. And honestly, I think it was a particular supplement I was taking and having to rearrange some things, and so far so good since I've made the changes. Now, that made me aware, even more so, of my weight. It made me think about my long-term health. And so I began to look at the things I've always looked at, but look at them with much more scrutiny. The very first thing is saturated fat. I mean, it's common sense, or it should be. Saturated fat is what clogs your arteries, point blank. And you know, you got all this stuff about trans fat and mono this, that, and the third. No, keep it simple. Saturated fat. Saturated fat clogs your arteries. And I'm not no doctor, but I know enough and I've studied enough to know that saturated fat is what clogs your arteries. I remember when my grandfather had his heart attack when I was a child, they gave him these heart manuals, these little books on how to take care of your heart health and all this other stuff. Saturated fat was in there. It's not uncommon, and it should be something that everybody knows about. So saturated fat is a big deal. I began to pay attention to how much saturated fat was in what I was eating, which once I realized how much saturated fat was in some of what I was eating, it scared the heck out of me. And I said, okay, I can't do this anymore, and I made some major changes. I have a 3-gram rule, basically. Saturated fat, it has to be 3 grams or less. If it's a TV dinner, some type of snack, breakfast food, whatever, 3 grams or less. Now, not to say that there's not ways around that rule. There's been times I ate out. I'm pretty sure it had more than 3 grams of saturated fat. But overall, that's my rule. And so far, it has shown to work. It has helped. I tell people the story about the turtle pie. It's been about 8-9 months now, but I wanted a turtle pie, and hadn't had one in a while, and I love turtle pie. It's very delicious, until I saw how much saturated fat was in it. And it was like something like 12 grams in one slice or something. It was insane. And I know good and well when, you know, we would have cookouts, stuff like that. We'd have turtle pie. I would eat 2-3 slices. Come on, do the math. You know, and then it's like, oh, that's where the weight came from. And so, and stuff, and sweets are terrible. I'll be honest with you. Like, if it, you know, I work at, I'm not going to mention their name, but one of the pharmaceutical retailers, and you know, you go down the candy aisle, and there you go. You start reading the back of Snickers and Reese's, and it's like 5, 6. I mean, there's this one, I think it's an Oreo candy bar that's like got 8 grams of saturated fat, and it's like, ooh, you know. You look at the donuts, it's the same thing. It's just very unhealthy. And it also ups your triglycerides, your cholesterol, all this other stuff. When I found out, because one of the things I do have is high triglycerides, I found out that sweets cause increases in triglycerides. I was like, oh, it just ruined my life. But so one of the first things is saturated fat. That's probably the biggest thing for heart health, and it keeps your gut down. Like, I look at how much weight I've lost, but the biggest thing, I look down and my gut is not as big. I mean, I've got a belt that went down 4 or 5 holes on the belt. I mean, it's crazy. You know, just cutting back certain things. The next thing, the first thing, like I said, is saturated fat. The second thing is hydrogenated oils and fats. Basically, anything that says hydrogenated, stay away from it. I remember the first time I heard it was on the 700 Club, and they were basically explaining the chemical compound of a hydrogenated oil or fat. It is one chemical compound away from plastic. So it's safe to say, when we eat anything with hydrogenated fats or oils, anything with the word hydrogenated in it, we are eating plastic. So it's kind of like, oh, you know, it's in margarine, it's in most of our candy bars, and it's in a lot of sweets. And it's not in everything, and it's always in the ingredients section, not the nutritional facts. That's another thing to pay close attention to. First thing, saturated fat. Second thing, hydrogenated oils and fats. Anything that says hydrogenated, it's in the fine print. Look for it. The third thing that I began to pay close attention to was high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is known for developing belly fat. What I like to say about high fructose corn syrup is, and I don't know if it's scientifically correct or not, but basically with high fructose corn syrup, it's like sugar on steroids. It's in almost all of your sodas, unless you go to Earth Fare and buy a Coke that has real sugar in it. And they do still make them. They're usually in a bottle, like an actual glass bottle, and you can tell the difference between high fructose corn syrup and real sugar. There is a difference, and you can tell it's difference in taste, but it's also difference on your health. It's much like the hydrogenated fats. It's just not good for your body. But the biggest thing that I've heard the most about with high fructose corn syrup is the contributing factor to diabetes, and it's a main contributing factor to belly fat. So those are the top 3 things. Like I said, saturated fat, hydrogenated oils and fats, and high fructose corn syrup. There's some other side notes I'll make as far as the little thing. Those are the top 3 on my list. Aside from that, sodium nitrate. Sodium nitrate is in a lot of lunch meats. I wanted a bologna and cheese sandwich a few weeks ago. I could not find any bologna that did not have sodium nitrate. Sodium nitrate has been linked to any type of lower extremity cancer, and mainly stomach and colon cancer. So it's definitely something to stay away from. Your food dyes, it's best. I mean, there's a lot of debate about food dyes. It's best just to stay away from them. I thought I'd lucked out with Nutri-Grain bars. I ate blueberry Nutri-Grain bars quite a bit, and then I found out it had red 40 or red something in it, and I just said, okay. And at the advice of several people, I stopped eating them because of the food dyes. I have no idea why they put food dyes in Nutri-Grain bars. I mean, what would it look like without it? I mean, would it not look blueberryish enough? I mean, it would taste the same, I know, because the food dye does not actually contribute towards the taste. So I feel like, we need to really advocate for food companies to advocate for our health, because it's not fair to us as the consumer. So as I said, those are the other 2 side notes, but the top 3, saturated fat, high fructose corn syrup, and hydrogenated oils and fats. Those are the 3 big things. Another thing that I did as well several months ago, earlier in the year, I stopped taking prilosec. I've been on prilosec for about 5 years, and I've talked to several people who had studied about it and so forth. I began to study up on it and saw all the lawsuits and studies that had been done. And basically with prilosec, or the actual over-the-counter name is omeprazole, it is a drug that I would actually say is a miracle drug. It makes your stomach invincible. You can eat anything. And I know that a very good portion of my weight gain happened after I started prilosec. And you know, the whole thing started innocently because I had indigestion from a small amount of weight gain. It triggered GERD and indigestion and so forth. And so I started taking prilosec, and in taking prilosec, on it for 5 years, not knowing that it increases your chance of heart attack and stroke and cancer by 20%. It's insane. It's not good for you at all. But it is a miracle drug because it makes your body able to consume anything. And my theory, and you know, I'm a very common sense type of guy, very practical, very logical, and I look at it like this. If I'm eating something and my body is trying to regurgitate it, there's a reason. And it's not just necessarily I got GERD. It may just be the fact my body can't handle it. Maybe I don't need to be eating that pizza or spaghetti or whatever it is that's causing me to regurgitate it. Maybe I don't need to be eating those deep fried whatever it is. And so honestly, I have watched, since I have stopped taking it, I've watched my diet decrease even more. I don't eat as much. I'm more careful what I eat, and I purposefully try to eat healthier. You know, as opposed to when I was on prilosec, because like I said, when I was on prilosec, I could get away with eating anything. Now, if I eat a bunch of deep fried stuff, I'm going to feel it later. You know, but here's the thing, if you don't eat it, you don't feel it. So all in all, that also, I do believe, played a major contributor in me losing my weight, was getting off of that medication. Like I said, I'm over the last month or two, I'd say between May, June, well, I'd say June, July, and August, right in there, my weight has begun to stabilize at around 195. And 193, 193 to 196. So I'd say on average about 194, 195. Now with that, knowing that it is kind of stabled out now and leveled out, because the first part of the year I was just losing weight. You know, I went from 225 and down and down and down each month. And if I get a chance to put it in this video, I have a graphic. I can show you the chart of how my weight has decreased since the beginning of this year. It's really insane. And another thing too, this has been primarily with diet change. This has not been with exercise. The exercise has been minimal. The idea, I have walked some, but as far as hardcore exercising, not at all. And so now that it's leveled out, I do want to begin to implement exercise more so into what I'm doing, because I do feel like that will begin to not only bring it down more, but it will also tone me up and get me to a healthier weight and just a healthier body type. But basically, overall, that's how it happened. That's how I did it. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be glad to answer them. And like I said, those top three things: saturated fat, hydrogenated oils and fats, and high fructose corn syrup. Now, it does not mean that you cannot splurge once in a while. I know maybe a month ago I went and had an ice cream from McDonald's. I don't eat ice cream very often anymore. I try to avoid it, and I definitely try not to buy it, because it has an insane amount of saturated fat. And when you add it up, and for me, I like a bowl of ice cream. And so it's ridiculous. I know my mom, she purchased some frozen yogurt and let me try it. Frozen yogurt actually is very tasty, has minimal saturated fat, and it seems to be a very good alternative to ice cream for those of you who want ice cream, or want something that is cold and tastes like ice cream, because it really does. It's just like ice cream. So if you want an alternative to that, I would definitely suggest getting frozen yogurt. But overall, those are the biggest things. I could go down a list of foods and so forth, but it's really about the ingredients in the food more so than anything. You know, I remember last year I was going to Earth Fare thinking, okay, if I buy cookies from Earth Fare, they'll be better for me. And that wasn't the case at all. I mean, yeah, it was made from scratch, some of the cookies and so forth. But when you really delve into the ingredients, you find out, okay, it may be healthy ingredients, but how much saturated fat is going through your arteries. I'll never forget the comedy routine with Drew Carey when he was on Johnny Carson, and he was basically marching saying, down the arteries, let's clog them up, you know, that type of thing. And that's what it's like. I mean, most of the food we eat is designed to kill us pretty much and knock us over dead with a heart attack. So definitely be leery. Look at your ingredients, make sure, and study up on ingredients. If you see something funky, look it up. And also be aware, too, that everything on the internet is not accurate. You've got, I hate the term now of fake news, but it is the truth. You've got some fake news, fake media, so forth, and just make sure you get it from a reliable source. I think that's the main thing, is whenever you do research, just look for a reliable source. Anyway, like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. Be sure, you know, feel free to do your own research. Most of what I've said can be proven. It's not opinion, it's fact. And it's science. So, anyway, and like I said, I've lost 35 pounds, so it shows. So it obviously does do something to you. Another thing that I want to touch on very briefly about weight gain and so forth. I did not realize how big I had gotten, up to almost 230 pounds, or over, actually. But around 230 pounds. Looking back on the pictures and so forth versus now, I can see very much so how I've lost that weight, and it's really nuts, you know. So that's another thing, and I was just watching a documentary called Obesity Postmortem. It's on Netflix. It's based in the UK. It's scary. You need to have a strong stomach. I don't, and I was eating. I don't know how I continued to watch it, but I did. But basically, they dissect a person whose body has been donated to science, who happen to be obese, and they're looking at the organs to see how the obesity affected them. But one of the people that they interviewed made a point. It creeps up on you. And that is the best thing I can say. It does creep up on you. And once it's crept up, sometimes you don't even realize how bad it has gotten until you, because even looking at pictures, you don't realize it sometimes. But after a while, you have people saying, whoa, dude, you gained a lot of weight or whatever. And as for me, you know, it started to catch up with me. And so for those of you battling with it and struggling with it, like I said, diet change is a big process. But I mean, the biggest thing is just deciding how much you really want to live, and how you want your quality of life to be. I can say that since I've been doing this, and since I've lost the 35 pounds, my body has changed quite a bit. I find myself being able to do more flexible, etc., moving around faster, so forth. Just that small amount of weight, and it is a small amount of weight considering how much weight I gained. And you got to understand, see, when I was between in my late teens, early 20s, you know, I weighed maybe 120, 130 pounds on average. So you're talking about a 100-pound weight gain, which is insane. It shouldn't be on anybody. To have that much weight gained is insane. And you can, just to even fathom it and to say it out loud, it's like your body's under a tremendous amount of stress if you do that. So, you know, like I said, it's all about, you know, what type of quality of life do you want? It's still not going to be perfect, but cutting down and being knowledgeable about what you're eating and drinking and so forth is very important. Another thing I have to say is I cut down on coffee. I still drink coffee. I've reintegrated it into my system, I guess you could say. But I remember after the heart palpitations started, maybe a month or two in, I went cold turkey and just cut the coffee. And for 3 days I had a migraine. It was terrible, but very much worth it. It was very worth it, because it reset my system, because I had become so dependent on caffeine. Well, not just caffeine, but coffee. I tell people all the time, there's something different about the caffeine in coffee versus a soda. Coffee gives me a buzz. Soda doesn't. Coffee wakes me up. There's a big difference. And the thing with coffee, at that point, I guess prior to the end of last year, I was a shift supervisor in management and so forth, and I was having to drink 3, sometimes 4 cups of coffee a day. Sometimes I just buy a Frappuccino and chug it down. An enormous amount of calories. You know, theoretically, you think, oh, this ain't gonna hurt me. It's healthy. You know, it's okay. It's coffee. You know, but when you're dependent on it, and then you get to the point where it's not giving you a buzz, that's a problem, and that's called an addict. And yeah, you can be a coffee addict or a caffeine addict, and I was one. But like I said, cutting it out altogether, the biggest part was getting past the headache. I don't know if it directly affected my weight. I really don't know. But I can say that I have felt a better quality of life since I did it. The other thing, some of my goals, like I said, you know, I do want to start integrating more exercise into my routine. My goal is to get down to 150 pounds. So I've got 45 pounds more to go. I feel like 150 would be a pretty decent weight. So, you know, continuing with the diet, integrating exercise. Another thing too that I failed to mention is drink plenty of water. I do it. I found that when I'm at work, I drink a lot of water. When I'm not at work, I don't. That's a problem. So I've tried to purposefully, like if I have a day off or just any type of change in scenery, I try to make sure I really implement a bottle of water. So you really want to do that. That really does help. It helps with your diet, it helps with your weight, it helps with everything. The other goal I have is to get off of all of my medicine. I'm on red yeast rice, which is for triglycerides. I've never had high blood pressure problems until I started messing with the red yeast rice and took it off my diet. And my blood pressure shot up. So the goal is to get it to the point where I don't need red yeast rice anymore, nor thyroid medicine. I'm also on thyroid medicine. The good news is the last time I went to the doctor, I guess about 2 months ago, had blood work done, my thyroid had gone down. So with that being said, it's a great thing that my thyroid has gone down, because there's a good possibility that either my medicine can be cut back or I may be able to be taken off of it completely. So overall, those are my goals, and this is where I'm at. For every person, it's different. You know, some people, I heard a story from one of my doctors about a lady who lost like 100 pounds just by dancing 30 minutes a day, just jiggled and danced and, you know, to music 30 minutes a day, and she lost 100 pounds. And and she lost her belly. That was a big part of it. So, you know, it's different for everybody. Different methods work, but I know for a fact that what you put in your body is a big key contributor to everything that happens. So keep that in mind. Like I said, the saturated fat, hydrogenated fats and oils, and high fructose corn syrup. Those are the three big things. And those other things I mentioned as side notes that cause other ailments such as sodium nitrate and food dyes and some of that. You know, just really keep an eye on what you're eating and what you're taking in. I must also add for this video presentation that one of the other primary things that I stopped doing was drinking 2% upwards of milk. I have switched to skim milk, and I have been doing that now since probably the latter part of last year, beginning of this year, and I do believe that has contributed to my significant weight loss. Anyway, that's that. I hope this video has been helpful, and I just want to encourage you to, you know, if you are overweight, you may want to go take a look at that documentary about obesity, because I watched it today, or most of it, and it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant what fat does to us, and the fact that most of the cheaper foods are crap. Basically, most of the cheaper foods that we get are crap, and they're not good for us. And I'm talking about chips and candy bars and the normal stuff that we would get, because it's like, 25 cent, 50 cent, oh yeah, let's get that, you know. And that's a problem too. You know, I would say it's worth it to spend $1 more. It's not always easy, because it does hurt your pocketbook, but it is better to be health conscious and be here for another 50 years, hopefully, you know. So take care of yourselves, and like I said, I hope this has been helpful, and any feedback is appreciated. Thank you very much.